Yeah.
We have it now. Good evening. I welcome you to the January 24th, 2018 meeting of the Economic Development and Housing Commission. Tonight's agenda is on the west wall of the chamber, along with request to speak cards. A reminder that everyone that wants to speak should complete the card and turn it into the commission clerk. If you wish to speak to the commission regarding an item on tonight's agenda, please write the item number on your card. If you wish to speak on items that are not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please do so by during the general administration section of tonight's agenda. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so that all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair, that's me, and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. So let's begin by having our Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner White, would you direct us so? Thank you. Okay, so we're entering into our general administration function. Is there anyone that wishes to speak or address the commission on that basis? I don't have a card or anything on that, so we'll skip to the adoption of the minutes from the December 20th meeting of the Economic Development and Housing Commission meeting. Do I have any discussion or a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I hear no nays, so I think we passed. Yay. So the minutes of the December 20th meeting are adopted. Moving now to public hearings. Before we start with the, do we want to take the staff? Oh, got another one? Thank you. Do we want to, oh, there we go, sorry. Okay, so I have to bang the gavel. Public hearing is now open for the 2018-2019 Community Development Block Grant Funding. So we'll have the staff presentation first. Mr. Laurel, would you like to introduce your staff member, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item tonight is our first public hearing on the new, or the 2018-19 CDBG Annual Action Plan. Amber Whitaker is one of our newest staff members. She's actually not our newest anymore. But she, you may have met her before. She actually started with the city as a summer steps intern back in May of 16. Was with us as an intern for over a year. We were able to bring her on full-time as community investment specialist, and she has taken over from Louise Collis, who recently retired, on all CDBG activities, especially now that we're entitlement. That's a really important function. Also on housing programs. So you may also know Raul Huerta. So our housing function is sort of under Raul and Amber. So I want to introduce Amber, and she's going to walk us through the public hearing tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Erin. So good evening, commissioners and community members. I'm here this evening to announce the availability of community development block grant funding for fiscal year 2018-2019 and to receive comment regarding the funding opportunities with that allocation. Did we have the presentation? Okay. All right, so to begin the presentation, the CDBG program is funded by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to provide viable urban communities by supporting affordable housing, creating suitable living environments, and expanding economic opportunities for low-income persons. All CDBG funds must be used to address one of the 3 national objectives, which are 1, benefit to low and moderate income persons, 2, elimination of slums or blight, and 3, urgent need, referring to emergencies such as flood or earthquakes. Just to note, 70% of a jurisdiction's CDBG allocation must be used for the first objective, which is to benefit low and moderate income persons. Also, under CDBG regulations, the city is required to develop a 5-year consolidated plan, and as you may recall, the city adopted its 5-year consolidated plan in July of 2016. So this was for years 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 2020. So what this plan did was it examined the needs in low-income neighborhoods or low-income persons within the city, and then it identified goals that addressed the largest needs that were identified within that examination. So in addition to the consolidated plan, we have our annual action plan. And what the annual action plan does is it outlines the activities that we will be doing for each year to make sure we are complying with the goals set forth in our 5-year consolidated plan. This brings us to our next slide. So I've created a flow chart for you to kind of just help show how we choose the activities that we will fund with CDBG allocations. So at first you have your CDBG national objectives up top that you have to be met first. And then below that you have your 5-year consolidated plan goals. So this kind of narrows the activities that can be funded with the allocation. And then you have your annual action plan that's done yearly that identifies the actual activities that we'll be doing that year to comply with the consolidated plan. And then our next slide. This summarizes the goals that we identified in our 2016-2020 consolidated plan. So as you can see, we have high priority goals and we have low priority goals. Goal number 1 was to reduce the incidence and impact of homelessness. Goal number 2 was to achieve the goals identified within Washington Realized. So Washington Realized was a planning document that kind of provided strategies on how to reinvest within the Washington neighborhood. For our low priorities, goal number 3 was to strengthen economic opportunities for lower income households. And goal number 4 was to affirmatively further fair housing. So to speak on goal number 3, we were funding micro enterprise technical assistance classes with our 2014 state CDBG grant, which expired this October 31st of 2017. So we are no longer doing that as of now. And next slide. So these next slides are kind of giving a summary of the current years of 2016-2017 and the projects that we chose to do and projects that we allocated our funding to. So our 2016 allocation, we funded the Riverwalk Trail Extension project, and we allocated about $529,000 for that. So that was to improve 21,000 linear feet along the Riverwalk from I Street Bridge to Broderick Boat Ramp. Progress to date, we're at 60% preliminary engineering, and construction is to begin in 2020. So for our next slide, we have our 2017 allocation.
May
Yeah.
I ask a question on that last
Sure.
slide?
Mm-hmm.
So from the 2016-17 allocation, $529,000 was on the Riverwalk Trail extension?
That is correct.
Okay. That's good. I
So-
didn't see that number in the staff report. That's the only reason I'm asking, because I was looking for that number.
Right, we just received an update on this project, so that's why the staff report doesn't reflect that.
Okay. So that leads me to, do you want to just get through all the slides and take questions at the end? Would that be a
It's up to
better
you guys.
approach? Okay.
Okay.
No problem, thanks.
So for our 2017 allocation, we had 2 activities that were funded. We had our permanent supportive housing project that we are currently working with a nonprofit developer in doing. We are hoping to develop approximately 60 units with that. In a project that size usually costs about 20 to 30 million, so this allows us to see that we're going to be needing additional funding sources such as local funds, private foundation monies, and low-income housing tax credits. And for the second activity, we funded fair housing activities or fair housing services, and this was to fund a contract with Project Sentinel, which was a fair housing counseling agency to provide those services to low-income residents within the city. So for our next slide, we have our 2018-2019 allocation. So we don't know exactly what our allocation is going to be, but this kind of gives us an estimate of what we can look forward to. And we do that by taking what we received last year, which was $446,000 about, and minusing 20% for planning and administration, which is allowed by CDBG regulations, and then adding our program income, which we've decided that average we receive about $100,000 per year, and that gave us our total of $456,000 for the 2018-2019 allocation. Okay, so this concludes my presentation. I'm sure you'll have questions, and now I respectfully ask that you open the public hearing to receive comment regarding possible funding opportunities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Amber. At this time, the floor is open for public comment regarding the CDBG Consolidated Plan, and I have some requests to speak. I'll take Michael Tovar first. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. How you guys doing?
Good.
So my name is Michael, and I'm a representative of Shores of Hope, located on 110 6th Street. I'm a case manager for our transitional housing program. So after reviewing the goals that you guys had set forth, both the high priority and the low priority goals, I feel that our transitional housing program meets most, if not all, of your goals. So a little bit of background. Our transitional housing program is for youth ages 18 to 21 who are transitioning out of the foster care system. They are covered under AB 12, which extends foster care in California up to the age of 24. What we do is we provide a service in which we allow our clients, or we call them, our clients, we allow them to take residence in one of our apartments. We own a small apartment complex, and it's essentially a starter apartment complex. It allows them to, go from foster care into their own independent living situation, and we, while at the same time, try to facilitate life skills and increase economic opportunity for these kids, because most of them come from, most of them have had troubles or issues completing high school. Most of them have had issues with finding jobs or keeping jobs for long periods of time. And so one of our biggest objectives is really to try and, keep these kids, keep them, what's the right word I'm looking for? To keep them afloat and to keep them moving forward and progressing in their lives to become fully functional, developed members of society. Because, a side effect of the foster care system is that most of the children exit the system with little to no life skills and little to no support after they turn 18. They're essentially shown the door. And so we try to mitigate that by, like I said, increasing economic opportunity, offering job services, offering interview training. We also offer, resume development, and really just try and help the kids prevent them from becoming homeless, because that is the alternative to our program. A lot of these kids, because they lack these fundamental life skills, will end up on the streets at some point. And so that is a major goal of our program, is to keep the kids off the streets and to show them the tools that they may not have been shown that will help them develop and like I said, keep them from, returning to the streets or entering a life of crime. And so I think that definitely does meet your highest priority number one, which is to reduce the incidence of homelessness, especially in the West Sacramento community. I believe that our program, plays a major role in that as well. Additionally, we try to strengthen and with one of your lower priority goals, we try to strengthen, we try to prevent them from becoming low income. We try to give them the opportunities that they need to succeed and move forward. We also try and get them enrolled in school so they can earn higher paying jobs, or at least enroll them in a trade school if they're not interested in traditional education, so that way they can develop as, maybe people who do construction or plumbing or electrical engineering of some sort. That's really kind of one of the major goals, and so I think it really does apply to your guys' CDBG funding, and it's definitely applicable, and I think that it's just a great program, and we're doing everything we can, but we could always use a little bit of help.
Great, thank you, Michael. All right, next we have, is it Dupree Vigil?
Good evening, it's Desiree, sir.
Desiree, thank you.
Hi. I am also an employee of Shores of Hope. I have been with the organization for about 6 years now. I run the outreach program, but I was also responsible at one time for case managing transitional housing families. The only thing that I have to comment in regards to the presentation that I saw was the Project Centennial resource. Who exactly uses this resource and how is it advertised for those who really need it? Because this is the first time that I've heard of it personally. Also, it would be really helpful for the community to obtain CSBG funding, not only for housing resources within the city, but also for motel vouchers in regards to those who really need it. What I'm speaking about is I am a part of a rapid rehousing program within the city, and in the county actually, and I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of it. Rapid rehousing is a homeless program that brings people from homelessness into permanent housing. Sort of like Housing First. It pays for the deposit and the first month's rent to those who qualify, but there are certain barriers to this program that I feel needs to be crossed. Also, the low-income housing is fine to build within the community with the CSBG funding, but really, who are we really trying to house? Because in order to get into this housing, there's a lot of barriers that I see a lot of my clients have. And even though we build more low-income housing within the community, what are we doing to see that people who have evictions or people who have bad credit or people who have a non-violent or non-drug related kind of felonies that are the barriers to them obtaining housing? Even if we build more housing within the community, we also need to think about the barriers that a lot of people like myself have in the community in order to get the housing, because you could build housing all day long, but who are we really housing? People who are, have good credit and all that. If we do that, then I see that the housing problem, it's not really about the housing problem, it's more like we are basically keeping the homeless where they're at because they don't qualify due to certain barriers. So, thank you.
Thank you. Were you referring to Yolo County? Is that?
The city of West Sacramento.
City of West Sacramento. Thank you. Next, we have Lorena Sanchez.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Lorena Sanchez, and I too represent Shores of Hope. I'm a case manager there as well, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about one of the additional services that we have just begun to provide at Shores of Hope. So right now, we just begun in collaboration with Empower YOLO to use the house that we have on our property to provide a shelter service for up to 8 individuals who have been victims of any crime. And I think that ties directly into your CDBG project, because basically, one of the problems that we're going to be having with these individuals that we are going to be providing shelter for is that we could only provide shelter to them for up to a certain amount. They won't have anywhere else to go after. So CDBG could be a possible funding source to develop housing for these people so that they have a home and somewhere to transition to after the shelter.
Thank you. All right, next is it Sergei Shirkovkin? I know I didn't get that quite right.
Sergei Shkurkin.
Sturcum?
Shkurkin.
Shirkum. Okay, Mr. Shirkum, please go
Sergei
forward.
Shkurkin from Shores of Hope. We had a chance for our staff to talk about the efforts, the 3 separate homeless programs that Shores of Hope does operate. The transitional age youth, who are all homeless by federal definition. The Desiree Vigil's Rapid Rehousing Program, which takes people in West Sacramento who are homeless, and they come into our offices and provide them with assistance with first and last month's rent, and also identify apartments and assist them with assistance and get them into apartments, the Rapid Rehousing Program. A part of a overall effort, Yolo County-wide, we are the West Sacramento outreach for that program, the outpost for that program. And the new program with the Sacramento, it's actually with Yolo County, it's with Empower Yolo, but the actual group we're doing with it is the District Attorney's Office, working with the homeless person that's on the street that's a victim of crime. And as you consider how to allocate this very important resource in line with your priorities, I'd encourage you, we will be applying to the City of West Sacramento for funding to support our program. We've selected, you've heard of all of our programs. The program that we will be applying for, and we'd encourage you to provide us some considerable, to have a look at it. I understand you've got some very big projects that you've selected, and that will take most of the money for sure. But maybe a little bit of money can be set aside for work that we're doing right now. Specifically, the Rapid Rehousing Program. The Rapid Rehousing Program is part of there's a $200,000 grant in Yolo County, which then is divided depending on who presents enough cases between the 3 cities, Woodland, Davis, and West Sacramento. West Sacramento, even though it has the largest number of homeless, is getting only 20% of that money right now. The reason they're only getting 20% of that money is because the staff position we have for it is only a 0.3 FTE. The person doesn't have enough time to even meet all the different people. We would like to request funding to make that a full-time FTE, somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000, so that we can leverage and get a larger, we should get at least $100,000 of that rapid rehousing money into Yolo County, to West Sacramento. We've only been getting about $20,000 a year of it. Most of the money has been, even though it should be split equally, we're only getting a small part of it because we're understaffed. We'd like to have you help us leverage CDBG funds to bring in a much larger amount.
Thank you.
Question for the speaker?
Yes.
When you say we're understaffed, are you referring to
Shores of
your
Hope.
organization?
Shores of Hope,
Shores
yes.
of Hope. And the objective would be, though, to try to obtain funds that flow through the county to the jurisdictions within the county and make them available to West Sacramento as a whole?
Exactly, more available. What happens is
So you would be coordinating with the city on that effort?
we could coordinate. What's happening is, depending on how many people come in to see Desiree, okay, who are homeless. Depending on how much time she has, she puts their cases together, goes to Woodland once a week and presents the cases. If she had more time, she could present more cases. It's first come, first serve. The more cases you present, the more cases you can present, the bigger piece of money. The other cities are all better staffed. They all have full-time people working on it.
Right. And those are city employees or?
No, they're nonprofit organizations in those 2 other cities, but they're getting support. They're getting support from their CDBG. Woodland CDBG supports the Fourth and Hope effort and subsidizes it. Davis CDBG supports their rapid rehousing effort. Their allocation of their CDBG to their nonprofits is much greater. There's a much greater allocation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further request to speak, and therefore I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, do the commissioners have any questions of staff? I do. Commissioner Campbell?
So a couple quick questions. Appreciate your presentation. I'm curious, the projects that were initiated with funding from 2016 and 17 are ongoing. Do you have expectations that funds in this allocation will be committed to those projects to continue those projects, or was that money seed money and now you will expect to find other sources to complete those?
It would be an option to use this year's allocation in support of the permanent supportive housing project. So that is one option that we could use this year's allocation. So I wouldn't say expecting, but it is an option that we can do that.
Okay.
And then just to add, the first allocation to the Riverwalk Trail, that was sort of meant to be seed money to get that project designed. We would also have the option to revisit that for this allocation, but the intent is to find other funding to leverage to complete that project, non-CDBG.
And I would expect that to be the case in your supportive housing with a $20 to $30 million budget
Not necessarily.
for that.
That's a project that's going to need a lot more resources, so it is our number one priority. So as Amber said, it definitely is an option for consideration.
So
for this year.
where do you stand with that, having funded that in 2017? And again, that was to initiate the project. I'd assume those funds were used for engineering, for planning.
Yeah, so those funds will be used for acquisition of the property, so, wherever we decide to have the project located. What we try to do is because we receive such a small allocation compared to other cities within the region, we try to use our CDBG funding to leverage additional resources for the city. And that's why you see large portions of our allocation going to projects, because that way we can fund and leverage additional to fund these larger costly projects.
Yeah, what you speak to reflects, I think, a strategic approach that the city's adopted. You've got projects that have a 4 to 5 year or more time horizon, so they're not completed with the funds committed to them. They are intended to only initiate the projects that will build out over a period of time. That's clearly what this sort of approach reflects. Is that a fair assessment?
Of the city overall, yes.
Okay. Okay. I want to congratulate Shores of Hope for their presentation and their coordination in their presentation. I certainly think that's a extremely valuable project in its effort, and the foster housing in transitional approach to kids coming out of the foster program is very, very essential, and does also tie in, as you well stated, to the homeless agenda and initiative of the city. So thank you for your presentation.
And commissioners, any further comments? Commissioner White?
So I want to thank the Shores of Hope for coming too. We don't often get people who come and make comments, so it's nice to hear from members of the community, and we're very proud that you're in our community and doing such great work. I do know from sitting on this commission for a long time that government funding comes with lots of parameters and lots of restrictions. So I'd like to clarify, Amber, if what I heard was a request for using some of these funds for a staff position and some of these funds to address short-term housing needs. Do the parameters of this HUD funding allow for either of those expenditures?
Does CDBG allow for grant administration?
Allow for it to fund a staff position at Shores of Hope,
Oh, I see.
or to provide short-term housing in their rapid housing program? Would it allow for those things to happen within this particular program?
Right, correct. So it would be a benefit to low or moderate income persons. Services such as, well, just overall providing a service, we can only allocate 15% of our CDBG funding towards an actual service. The other allocation would need to go to like a project such as part-time housing or short-term housing, such as that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Commissioner Kesselman?
So I will echo the comments on thanking Shores of Hope for coming out tonight. Just closing the loop on the questions that I had for the speaker, I do think it's maybe a missed opportunity for the city, given the fact that West Sacramento has a homeless population that greatly exceeds the other jurisdictions in Yolo County, why we're not receiving the lion's share of that available funding from Yolo County. And I recognize that there's distribution and a process through which we have to receive those funds and apply for those funds. But if there are ways in which we could utilize CBDG dollars to then leverage our ability to get additional funds from the county as pass-through dollars, I think that's something worth exploring at least, and that we ought to spend some time looking into how we might be able to do that. And if we could take, I think I heard 15% of our CBDG funds can be utilized to go towards
Services.
services?
Yeah, such as fair housing services or services where you're, answering a phone call or helping provide
So it could
assistance.
support a staff position, and that staff person then arguably could be tasked with,
Providing services.
okay. Well, I think it warrants looking into. If we could increase our pot of money, we could have a greater impact. So, and to hear that the city of West Sacramento is only getting 20% of Yolo County's overall full amount for homeless services seems to me low. And so I had just a couple of quick other questions for you. So are we expected to receive this year the same amount of CBGG funds that were received in previous years, or are we reducing the amount that we're receiving annually? I was trying to do the quick math based upon the slides as I was looking, but it seemed like last year we had 529,000, so maybe, are we coming in?
That was including program income.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like 80,000 less than we're getting this year?
Well, we're not sure
getting this
exactly
year?
what we'll be getting because Congress has to pass the budget before we will know what our exact allocation is. But we've seen how jurisdictions receive about the same amount of funding because of the formula they use. So that's why we're thinking about 500, which last year's allocation was, I believe, 446,000. So that's why we add the program income, and that got us to the 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's roughly equivalent every year?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That was, and then I guess I just have one last question. I see here it's coming back to this commission in March, and at that point you'll have recommendations on exactly how you would be looking to spend this year's allocation. Is
Yeah,
that
we would
correct?
have our draft annual action plan completed at that time, and then that way we could receive comment on the actual plan.
Okay. Great. Well, I would just end then with encouraging you to maybe talk further with Shores of Hope to see about looking how to leverage CBDG funds to obtain additional funds for this community, I think would be a benefit.
Okay, and then also too, on your comment, I just wanted to note that the city is partaking in a regional assessment of fair housing, which includes Davis, Woodland, Sac County, the city of Sacramento, Citrus Heights, Roseville, to kind of assess the issues at a regional level. So maybe that speaks to, we do receive a lower allocation, but we are trying to work regionally to assess our needs at a larger level.
Is that the key change then? I saw that they this year are saying instead of doing an analysis of the impediments to housing choice, they switched over to assessment of fair housing?
Yes, that is correct. And so we are in the process of currently completing that right now.
And that's
So-
now a regional effort where you're working with?
Yes, so we're one of the first regions to complete that as a regional, as a whole. instead of just doing it as the city, because we do understand that our problems relate to other jurisdictions' problems and their problems relate to us as well.
Right. Thanks for your work on this.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Price, do you have anything? Okay, all right, thank you. Couple of things I have. First of all, Shores of Hope, thank you for being here and making us aware of the needs that you have and the programs and how we can assist through the CDBGE. I always want to add an E on the end of it. I don't know why I do that. Okay, CDBG program, HUD program. So in March, when you come back, you'll have wade through the options and you'll have an option selected?
Yes, we hope to. So we will be having a meeting with HPAC, Housing and Poverty Action Coalition, and we will be kind of discussing our goals and possibilities with them. But we will also be having presenting to the Parks Commission in early March as well. So hopefully by the time we come back to you, we will have the draft annual action plan, but we'll have a more secure idea of what we would like to do.
Okay, will that still be in the form of options, or will you have, you'll be presenting the direction?
It will be a draft annual action plan, so you can always provide comments, and at that time, we can alter the annual action plan if we receive comments and if we feel that other opportunities need to be looked at.
Okay.
But it will have staff's recommendation for the allocation in the plan.
I'm sorry?
It will have staff's recommendation for the allocation in the plan.
Okay, great.
Is
Thanks, Mr. Laurel. Yes.
there a community outreach portion of this in that timeframe as well?
Yeah, so our community outreach for the annual action plan is public hearings. But again, when we did the consolidated plan, we did a huge outreach on that. And so we don't want to forget about what we received during that process. So the plan outlined what that outreach wanted to do. So it was kind of like a larger outreach that included the 2016 consolidated plan.
But is there a point in time during this process where there's where providers actually then approach the city and make proposals to be included within the?
Right, so some jurisdictions will have an RFP process where people can apply. Our city at this time, the process that we have, we do not do an RFP process. That's something we can always look at, but again, with the small allocation we receive, there would be challenges with that, so.
Got it.
Okay, so let me understand so this RFP process would be an avenue for Shores of Hope, for example, to respond.
In addition to coming up and speaking, it would be an opportunity.
Yeah, so maybe there's a consideration for some format to allow more public awareness and input and identification of need for groups such as Shores of Hope going forward.
If I could speak to that, what we can do after this meeting is request that they put any requests in writing, so that way we at least have a formal request from Shores of Hope, so we can deal with it at the staff level that way. We intentionally don't open up like other cities do, just given, as Amber said, we have such a limitation on the amount of funding. And given my experience, I actually worked in Woodland for there's still entitlement. And as the funding went down year to year, there were still, at one point, we had like 20 grants, and it became quite unwieldy for the administration side of CDBG. So we, by design, have made it, attempted to make it fairly simple. And so we don't have an RFP process, but the purpose of this public hearing is to get, requests in from other organizations. So in this case, because Shores of Hope is interested, we'll ask that they put it in writing.
Mr. Laurel, is this the public hearing that we're talking about? Or this is it?
This is the first public hearing, right?
Okay. And that's one of 3?
CDBG requires that we hold 2 public hearings. In the city, we actually hold 3. So there will be one here, and then there will be another one later with with this commission, and then we will hold a public hearing with council. Sometimes summer in, I believe, May, we will have the third public hearing.
And this is published on the city website as far as this opportunity, the schedule?
Yeah, we publish in the newsletter. We send out an email to HPAC, which has over 30 organizations that belong to it. So all of those organizations receive it. We also post on our website when we have public hearings, and we try to utilize social media as much as possible.
Great, thank you. And then one other point of clarification. You mentioned the regional effort of surveillance and cooperation. How is that funded, or is there an amount of the CDBG funds that goes to this effort of this regional analysis?
Yes, that is correct. We all pay a portion to fund that project.
Okay, and then the results are disseminated and
Yeah, so our 20% of our administration goes towards that. And when the result of the actual assessment, you mean?
Right.
Yes, once we have that, we will be possibly amending our citizen participation plan and our consolidated plan to reflect what we receive from that assessment.
okay, so what's the timing of that study versus your program already, the schedule you're already working under? How would those dovetail?
So the assessment of fair housing takes we decided it was about 18 months. So we're hoping to have it completed by the end of this year. But we're still providing the fair housing services, which addresses, that's what we're doing in the meantime, is providing fair housing services through the consultant in the meantime until that assessment is completed.
Okay, so that's part of, yes, Commissioner Price?
I'd just like to, Mr. Laurel, you said that the possibility that Shores of Hope could submit a request. Specifically, what would you require there in that request? A dollar amount, a position, a job description?
Yeah, I think what we would request, given the unique nature of our process here, is we would need them to tell us the specific dollar amount. We need to tell them exactly how they would propose to use the money and make sure that it's, give us the opportunity to make sure that it would be CDBG eligible, and really just request enough information so we can weigh that request against our other options and come back with that information to the commission as well.
A date certain? Or?
What I was going to do is after the meeting, we'll speak with the Shores of Hope representatives and work that out. The purpose of this public hearing was to get the feedback from the public on our process and the priorities. But, given, again, that we don't have a formal RFP process, and staff would not recommend doing that at this time, at this stage in our evolution with CDBG, we do want to at least give organizations that are interested a process for how they can have the request evaluated. So to me, that's a fair way to do it. So we'll work out the details with Shores of Hope after, but we'll definitely bring it back to the commission as part of that second public hearing, along with our recommendations.
Okay, and I'd like to echo the other commissioners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. And it's definitely a worthwhile service that you provide. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Laurel, how do you see what's your take on the timing of the regional input criteria to our program here as far as?
Yeah, I think Amber did a good job addressing that. We are doing this. It's a kind of a novel approach, because usually when you're a CDBG entitlement city, you do your own assessment of areas of fair housing, and this being a regional assessment had more startup time required than if we did it ourselves. But it will align when it's complete with our annual CDBG process. But in the meantime, as Amber said, we have the contract with Project Sentinel. And actually, that's a good opportunity to address, one of the speakers had questions about how that actually works and how we promote it. So we do have it on our website. Project Sentinel is a nonprofit that provides tenant-landlord mediation and fair housing assistance for people that feel like they've been mistreated on fair housing issues. So we have information available at our counter. When people call the city, they'll get referred to Project Sentinel. And they also hold workshops with landlords on fair housing training. So in the meantime, until this regional assessment's done and the outcomes are decided, we'll continue to fund that contract and operate what we've been doing.
Very good, thank you.
So, just
Yes.
to, because I am the
Commissioner
little
White?
dark rain cloud, working for a business that gets federal funding, none of this is certain. This is, when we last heard from Louise, you know, we don't know the amount, we don't know that it's going to happen until the budget gets passed. So you're still planning as though it will happen, but it could be half the amount of money, it could be twice the amount of money.
That is correct.
Things are looking a lot better than they were this time last year. I'll say that much, because at least CDBG last year was, it really threatened, and it made it in with similar funding levels. But yeah, you're right. There's always year to year that risk that Congress decides it's a program that can be cut, and there you go. But I think the indications are, and the expectations are with this federal budget, we'll see a similar level as last year. So we're kind of operating on that assumption, but it's always uncertain. They've been trying to eliminate CDBG for 30 years. So.
Okay, any further comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, I just want to add my thoughts and contributions as you, excuse me, weigh the alternatives. I recognize the effort that went into putting together the consolidated plan was substantial. The 4 goals expressed within that still stand and will direct your decisions with regard to the use of this allocation, I'm sure, as will HUD and its priorities. Recognizing that housing is an unmistakable concern for the state of California, as the governor has expressed, and for every community in Yolo County and Sacramento. It is a driver in our economy, and it certainly is an important factor in our society and the stability of the communities, providing housing to the homeless, to the transitional, as well as to different levels of the income strata. I can tell you, and having listened to the radio yesterday, apartment availability in Davis is at 0.2%. I know in West Sacramento, and talking to people, apartments are pretty unavailable in this community as well. So if I could stress an area that you do look at without deviating from the projects that you've already selected, and I want to recognize Mr. Laurel's commitment to limiting the number of options and diversifying the portfolio so much that you are ineffective. So maintaining the projects that you're working on and supporting them, but recognizing the importance of housing in the city would be my suggestion. So,
Yes, Commissioner Kistler?
Once again, I will echo the comments of Commissioner Campbell. I think the goals that have been laid out are appropriate, and we should continue to stay the course in attempting to achieve those goals, but in looking how to specifically allocate funds, putting the emphasis on housing and providing housing for low, extremely low, and moderate income would be my recommendation on where to put the priority. There are obviously projects that are underway and ones that have been jump-started, several that deal with looking at addressing otherwise blighted neighborhoods, but housing is, I think, at the forefront of the political discussion this year more than it's been at any other time I can recall. And the homeless population is on an upward trend as well. So finding out ways that we can take steps with these dollars that help see additional units come online and come online as fast as possible, I think would be the best use of these dollars. Thanks.
If I could just respond to that too, appreciate the comments, and actually wanted to get back to one of the speakers' comments on low, no barrier housing. That is exactly what the prior year's allocation is all about. West Sacramento has no permanent supportive housing right now, today. We've made tremendous progress on the project that we are working towards, and we funded with the last year's allocation. But it really is to address that specific need. It's the type of housing that isn't traditional affordable housing that requires all the barriers to be met for permanent housing. So that's something that it is our number one priority in CDBG. We are working towards this project, and it is going to have other funding needs. So it's something that we're definitely considering as one of those options, so it's good to hear the comments on that topic.
Good. Commissioners, anything further? Well, I thank the commissioners for setting some good priority considerations for staff and recommendations to council going forward. And Ms. Whitaker, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next we have General Administration, requests for and comments by commissioners. Any particular issues commissioners want to discuss?
So with regard to the federal budget, is the CDBG considered an entitlement program? Because that is coming up in congressional consideration for reductions.
The city is considered an entitlement jurisdiction.
Well, what I meant in terms of the federal budget, whether or not this rises to the level of social services, food stamps, other types of direct benefit programs. I don't believe that it is.
It's under the HUD budget. I mean, in the broad sense of entitlements, I don't think it's quite considered in there. But
I know that was one of their targets. So
always a target. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But from what I'm hearing, at least for this year, we haven't heard that CDBG is looking to take a big hit, like I said earlier. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, back to administration function. So the only other comment I have on that is my ongoing comment about Lake Washington improvements at the park, at Whitey's Park. I haven't had a chance to engage with Charlene yet.
Yeah, so I actually did talk to her about it, and she's expecting a call from you, and what I can say on that is it doesn't sound like it's something that is tied to future development. It's something that will have to be undertaken by the city at some point, but I don't have all the details on it. So it's really a question for the Community Development Department, and more precisely, the Development Engineering Division would have the exact details on that.
Thank you for having that discussion, and I'll follow up with her.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, staff updates.
Yes. Let's see. So first, let's cover the next meeting. Next meeting on March 28th. One item for sure will be our second CDBG public hearing, but we will likely have other items as well. And I just want to give you a quick update on a few items that you've been working on for the past, at least past year or so. The Pioneer Bluff Stone Lock Reuse Master Plan is on its home stretch. We'll be going to council hopefully in the first meeting in April. So if, just out of your interest on that topic, having had some feedback on it, just something to look for, and I will keep you updated on the progress. But hopefully it'll be adopted at the first meeting in April or second meeting in April, and that plan will be done. Secondly, the Grand Gateway Master Plan. This is the area that's just down the street next to the bowling alley, the property the city owns. It's something that I anticipate will be coming back to the commission probably on the heels of the Pioneer Bluff plan being adopted. So that's just a heads up. We need to do some planning amendments in order to track with the infrastructure investment that's going in, and then ultimately we'll be doing an RFP. So we want to keep you engaged on that project. And then lastly, we talked tonight about the permanent supportive housing project. I'm thinking maybe March might be too early, but we'll see. I do want to bring an update on the housing side of the commission to get you up to speed on our plans for that project coming up. So those are the updates. If you want to just keep going, I don't have any grand openings or groundbreakings to invite you to this meeting, so hopefully in March 28th we will, but that's all I have.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
So you're talking about specifically about the lot directly adjacent to the bowling alley where the new cell tower?
Yeah, so that's a temporary cell tower, actually. It was moved off the Tower Court property over to that site as a temporary measure. But, so it's that property and everything from there all the way to Tower Bridge Gateway. The city owns that entire property. It's planned for mixed-use development. Right now, they're putting in all the infrastructure and doing a brownfield cleanup. But that'll be developed for mixed use eventually.
So the laydown yard and staging that Tigard is using, that's also city property?
Yes, and that's part of the overall site.
Uh-huh. And there's no specific proposals for that?
Not yet, other than the basic zoning allows mixed-use development of all kinds, retail, housing, hotel, you name it. We have a plan called the Grand Gateway Master Plan that, I don't know if any of you, I think Commissioner Brady was on the commission maybe at that time, but I know we brought it at some point to this commission or whatever form it was before, but we need to bring it back because we're going to be doing some amendments to it, and I think it'd just be a good item for you to see and give some feedback to us before we get to the point where we're issuing an RFP and looking to do a project there.
Great, thank you.
Grand Gateway Master Plan.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments from the commission and staff? Mr. Laura, you're good?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I will entertain the motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second, okay, I have a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.